Think about a wildly embarrassing outfit you wore, or, I mean, just a truly terrible decision you made when you were 22.
Oh, there are definitely a few of those I try to forget.
Right. Just, picture it clearly for a second. Now, what if I told you that according to Ivy League sociologists and dive bar philosophers alike, that exact mistake wasn't a failure at all?
It's crazy to think about, but yeah, they argue it was actually a highly necessary, scientifically observable prototype.
Exactly. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are completely dismantling this immense, almost suffocating cultural pressure that's pitched to us about our early 20s.
Yeah, we're always told that stepping into adulthood is this grand era of, like, finding yourself.
Right. As if you just walk off a graduation stage and suddenly undergo this magical, coherent transformation into the permanent adult you're going to be.
But I mean, anyone who has actually lived through it knows that is rarely the reality. The lived reality is much closer to, well, a transitional freeform.
Totally free fall.
Society expects this solid foundation to be poured, but the ground itself is in a constant state of shifting tectonics. The expectation of immediate coherence is actually completely at odds with human development.
And that friction is the focus of the sources you, the listener, have provided for us today. We're looking at a multi-layered piece of conceptual art inspired by Taylor Swift's iconic song 22.
Which is such a perfect touchstone for this, right?
Yeah.
Because the song itself is all about that exact chaos.
Oh, totally. Happy, free, confused, and lonely at the same time. But this isn't just a standard gallery piece. You've handed us a really unique stack of materials here.
Yeah, we have a visual description of the central artwork, accompanied by 4 distinct textual components.
Right, there's a poetic piece called The Bridge, a curator's note, an Ivy League note, and this really gritty barfly note.
And honestly, the tension between these sources is what makes this analysis so worthwhile. These texts don't just neutrally describe the visual art.
No, they don't.
They actively argue with it, and they argue with each other. They approach the exact same physical object from wildly different vantage points.
Ranging from like pristine art theory all the way down to grounded lived experience. Reading through these sources feels like walking into a museum exhibit where the little informational placards next to the art are in an active fistfight over what the piece actually means.
That's a great way to put it.
So our mission today is to unpack how this artwork and its chorus of conflicting voices completely dismantles that tired cliche of finding yourself at 22.
They replace it with an ecosystem that is temporary, highly experimental, and ultimately really liberating.
Let's start with the physical anchor of the piece itself, though. Before we get into the academic arguments or the barstool wisdom,
Here.
paint the picture for us. What is the visual source material actually describing?
So the visual concept is striking. We're asked to visualize a deep crimson lipstick emerging from a polished chrome case. However, it's not sitting on a vanity table or thrown into the bottom of a purse. The artist has suspended the lipstick in midair within what the source explicitly describes as a luminous white void.
A luminous white void. The curator's note, from our sources, zeroes in heavily on this physical suspension.
It does.
The curator writes that the lipstick hovers between intention and expression. Like nothing has been applied to anyone's lips yet, but the transformation is undeniably present.
Right. The curator argues that the object exists less as an accessory than as a possibility.
And the quote that really anchors this, which I love, is, "Becoming begins long before the first trace appears."
That quote is just, it speaks so perfectly to the mechanics of anticipation. The art captures the precise millisecond before action.
Yes.
It's this state of being entirely unwritten, yet fully loaded with intent. The crimson color is a violent interruption of the white space, but because it's suspended, the energy remains entirely kinetic.
It makes me think of holding a video game controller just before you press the start button.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Like, the game hasn't happened, no moves have been made, no mistakes have been logged, but all the potential energy of the entire experience is loaded right there in your hands.
Wow.
Or, the feeling of sitting in front of a mirror at 8 p.m. on a Friday. You haven't even left the house, but the night has essentially already begun in your head.
Well, the distinction there, moving beyond the video game analogy, is that in a video game, the code is already written by developers.
Sure, yeah.
The outcomes are finite. With this suspended lipstick, the white void implies that the game itself hasn't even been programmed yet. You are inventing the rules and the environment simultaneously as you move.
I do want to push back on the interpretation of that environment, though,
Go, how so?
because the source heavily emphasizes this luminous white void. And, I mean, is that void truly supposed to represent the glorious blank slate of youth?
Well,
Because staring into an endless white void doesn't sound liberating to me at all. It sounds like the intimidating, almost suffocating pressure of having to choose who you're going to be.
that's a really valid point.
Right. If I have a completely blank canvas, the pressure not to ruin it is just immense.
The void is intentionally dual-natured. An empty space offers ultimate freedom. You can project any persona into it. But you're correct that this same emptiness provides zero guardrails.
Exactly. No guardrails.
It demands that you invent yourself from scratch, which is inherently terrifying. The suspended crimson lipstick is the tool designed to break that void, to make a mark.
But the moment you make that mark,
Right. The moment you make that physical mark, you collapse all the infinite possibilities into one singular reality. You've chosen a path for the evening, effectively killing off all the other potential versions of the night.
wow. Okay, so if we accept that the floating lipstick is this ultimate symbol of pure, nerve-wracking potential, the next question is how the different placards in our source material attempt to categorize it.
Because the tone takes a very sharp turn here.
It really does. When we move from the philosophical art gallery into the lecture hall, it gets wild.
This brings us to the Ivy League note. And this text attempts to force the chaotic potential of 22 through the dense, sterile lens of sociological academia.
It introduces a concept called the rhizomatic identity expansion model, or RIME.
Yes, rhyme. The source even includes this deeply satirical aside from the author. It says, as everyone knows, acronyms are important. Without them, academic language would collapse into readability.
I mean, they are fully winking at the audience with that line.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Ivy League note does propose a massive paradigm shift beneath all that jargon. It states that recent studies completely challenge the conventional assumption that identity develops through consolidation and stability.
Because coherence is the standard societal expectation, right? We just assume that as a person transitions out of adolescence, they solidify.
Right, they figure out their political views, their aesthetic, their career trajectory.
Exactly, and they bake these traits into a permanent brick. But the Ivy League note argues that the empirical evidence suggests otherwise. It claims that being 22 operates according to principles of multiplication rather than coherence.
And the source backs up this multiplication theory with what it calls the double one-eyed survey of 10,000 remembered celebrations.
I know, what a name.
It sounds like a survey conducted by an actual pirate, but the data point it produces is crucial.
It really is.
It claims 87.3% of participants described their 22nd year not as a period of self-discovery, but as a temporary suspension of the need to remain consistent with their previous selves.
That's a huge distinction.
Right. I want to ask you, the listener, to just think about your own early 20s for a second. If you had to map out your 22nd year, would you draw a straight, upward trending line of personal growth?
Probably not.
Or would it look like this tangled web of contradictory phases and overlapping friend groups?
Well, the bridge text in our sources poeticizes that exact tangled web. It contains the line, youth is an unkempt rhizome.
Okay, wait, what exactly is a rhizome for those of us who aren't botanists?
Right, so in botany, a rhizome is a subterranean stem system. It shoots out continuously in all directions. Think of like bamboo or ginger.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't just go straight down.
It does not have a single central taproot holding it down. It's a network of lateral offshoots.
Yeah.
So the 22-year-old identity isn't a single oak tree growing straight up. It's a sprawling vine growing everywhere at once, constantly testing new terrain.
I understand the rhizome concept, but I have a major issue with the Ivy League notes terminology here.
Oh, which part?
There's a specific term they use to describe the suspended lipstick itself. They call it a symbol of pre-performative identity potential, or PPIP.
Yes, PPIP.
I mean, isn't pre-performative identity potential just a ridiculously overcomplicated $100,000 tuition way of saying, like, getting ready to go out?
Right.
By trying to bottle the spontaneous, loud chaos of Taylor Swift's 22 era into a sterile acronym like PPIP, isn't academia entirely missing the point? Like, they are killing the magic by studying it.
I actually strongly disagree.
Really? Wow.
Because they aren't killing the magic. They're validating it. When a 22-year-old is just, quote, getting ready to go out, society generally dismisses it as frivolous behavior.
That's true, yeah.
But by applying a clinical term like pre-performative identity potential, academia is acknowledging that this messy, 8:00 p.m. mirror time, is actually doing the heavy psychological lifting of identity formation.
Oh, I see what you mean.
They're taking the dive bar experience and giving it the intellectual weight it deserves. The academic note concludes that the most influential versions of the self are often prototypes that were never intended to survive.
Okay, so it provides a clinical framework for a deeply emotional process.
Exactly.
But still, you can't graph a 2 a.m. identity crisis on a spreadsheet. To actually test if this multiplication theory holds up, we have to look at the source that strips away the sterile academic glove.
Yes, we need to examine the barfly note.
Right, which grounds all these theories in the sticky-floored reality of lived experience.
The barfly note strips away the theoretical distance entirely. It begins with a blunt observation regarding the whole concept of finding yourself.
Right, the author notes the irony there.
Exactly. Because the actual lived experience of our early 20s reveals something entirely different. The most memorable years happen when nobody actually knows who they are.
Which is so true. The source lists these hyper-specific, universally recognizable realities of that lack of permanence.
Oh, definitely.
Like you wear things you would never wear again, you say things you would never dare say later. At 22, you try on personalities the way you try on jackets.
And that lack of permanence is a feature of this age, not a bug. The barfly note mentions the phenomenon of meeting people who seem important forever and disappear by autumn.
Oof. We've all had those friends.
Right. You form intense, supposedly lifelong bonds in the line for a restroom, and 3 months later, you don't even have their phone number. You were just prototypes to each other.
The bridge text connects brilliantly to this group dynamic, too. It says, the party deterritorializes first names.
That's such a fascinating phrasing.
It really is. It basically means it removes the historical context of who you are, like the baggage from your hometown or your high school, and then it says, we become many under the same jacket.
That phrase illustrates perfectly how group contagion works during this phase of life. You aren't just operating as an individual, your identity temporarily merges with the collective energy of the group you're with that night.
The boundaries of the self just become highly porous.
Exactly.
Which brings us to, honestly, the sharpest metaphor in the entire bridge text. The X is old software that we hack.
Oh, that is a brutal line.
It's so brutal, but it's brilliant.
Well, think about the actual mechanics of hacking. You take existing code, you break its original security protocols, and you force it to run a completely new program.
Right.
Emotionally, that is precisely what happens at 22.
Yeah.
You don't process the loss of an ex through quiet, linear mourning.
No, definitely not.
You take the pain or the memory, and you use it as raw fuel to aggressively power a new persona.
Yeah.
You essentially weaponize the past to reinvent yourself for the night out.
Because the mindset is completely shifted. The barfly note says about the lipstick, nothing has happened yet, but somehow the evening has already started.
Yes.
Which brings me to another line in the bridge that fundamentally changes how we view this era. Midnight breakfast kills Chronos.
That is a really dense mythological reference to unpack right there.
Yeah, well, Chronos is the Greek personification of chronological time, right? Like tick-tock, linear time.
The 9 to 5 consequential time of the adult world.
Exactly. And the text is arguing that a midnight breakfast literally kills it. Think about the reality of a 2 a.m. diner run when you were 22.
Oh, man.
You slide into a vinyl booth, you order pancakes and french fries simultaneously, the fluorescent lights are just buzzing overhead, and normal time just stops existing.
It really does. It's a total glitch in the matrix.
You could be in that booth for 20 minutes or 3 hours. The rules of the outside world, the expectations of daylight, they simply do not apply.
Because you have stepped entirely outside the stream of accountability. The Greeks actually had another word for time, kairos.
Oh, what does that mean?
It means the opportune moment, or time measured by the depth of experience rather than ticking seconds. The 2 a.m. diner operates purely on kairos.
I love that.
Looking at the Barfly Notes diner analogy,
Yeah.
alongside the Ivy League's theory of temporary suspension, the underlying argument of this entire art piece becomes really clear.
Which is what?
The consistency is treated as an artificial constraint during a biological and psychological period, meant for massive expansion.
So if you demand consistency of a 22-year-old, you are essentially asking them to skip the drafting phase entirely and just publish the first draft of their personality.
Right, you're asking them to finalize the software without running any beta tests.
And beta tests are inherently glitchy. You don't wake up one day and just experience a revelation of your true self. You build your identity by trying on and actively discarding dozens of false selves.
The Ivy League note, despite the jargon we debated earlier, correctly identifies that these prototypes were never intended to survive.
Right.
And the Barfly note marries that academic thought to human emotion with its closing lines. It suggests that growing up isn't about becoming yourself, it's collecting enough abandoned versions of yourself to build a decent story afterwards.
Let's synthesize all of these perspectives. We've examined a suspended tube of crimson lipstick in a white void. We've navigated the rhizomatic identity expansion model from the Ivy League.
We have.
We've spent time in the sticky-floored reality of the barfly, and we've lived inside the glitch of a 2 a.m. diner run. The texts tell us that 22 is not an age, but a tide.
A tide that washes away the rigid structures we try to build around our identities. The conclusion drawn across all four sources is uniform, even if their language differs wildly. Identity emerges through relentless experimentation, not through sudden revelation.
I want to speak directly to you listening to this deep dive right now. Whether you're currently 22 and swimming in that specific tide, whether you're looking back on it with a mix of fondness and sheer embarrassment, or maybe you're navigating a completely different transitional phase of your life entirely.
The reframing we've uncovered in these sources matters immensely for how you view your own history.
It grants you permission to stop stressing about finding your one true, permanent self, permission to celebrate the messy, contradictory prototypes you leave behind.
Because that embarrassing outfit, that terrible decision, the friend who disappeared by autumn, they aren't mistakes.
No, they are the necessary iterations of your software. They are the raw materials of the story you are eventually going to tell.
You cannot get to the functional, final version of a self without surviving the buggy, glitchy beta releases. The art piece demands that we respect the void where those prototypes are born.
Which leaves us with a provocative final thought to mull over. If our truest story is just a collection of abandoned prototypes and the X is old software that we hack, what happens if we apply this 22 mindset to the older stages of our lives?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because we are so culturally conditioned to freeze our identities at 30 or 40 or 50, we are expected to solidify and remain consistent until the end.
Right, but what if we don't?
If we stop demanding consistency from ourselves as we age, could we trigger a brand new tide of that pre-performative potential? Could we find a way to experience the liberation of a midnight breakfast where the rules of time and expectation just melt away at absolutely any age?
That is the ultimate question this artwork leaves us with. It challenges the assumption that we are ever truly done experimenting.
I love that. We all deserve the right to hack our own software, to step out of chronological time, and to hover just for a moment in that luminous white void, poised for whatever comes next.